Lights, camera, action. Here we are. It's- It started out being a very simple idea for a video, and it just kind of grew. When I was a young lad, probably about 10, everything happened to me when I was 10. You know, I don't know what to say. Anyway, when I was about 10, I went down to the Sears. Remember those? I went to Sears, and at Christmas time they would clear out the garden department because you didn't really need gardening stuff in northern Utah in the winter. So garden stuff would be gone, and that's where they'd put the toys because the baby boom was in full swing. Everybody had about 6 kids, and they all had to have toys, and so you know it wasn't like adults go buy toys whether they have kids or not, and they usually buy toys for about 20 kids. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, I went to the Sears, and I'm looking at the toys, and I'm 10 years old, and suddenly I saw something that caused me to have very nearly a childhood heart attack, which is rare. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is what I saw. I hope I can get this in the frame. Look at that. Look at that. Now I'm going to make a video in the future where I talk about the art direction at Revell during this period. Somebody at Revell knew what they were doing. This is just gorgeous. I don't know who painted this painting. For a long time I thought it was Jack Linwood, but now I think maybe it was John Steele. But my research continues. Look at this glorious box. Look at that thing. This would, oh man, the imagination just runs riot. The little English ship, and it's fighting that big Spanish galleon. You know, the Spanish galleons were kind of overweight. They were, what do they call it now? Kind of swole. And they were full of gold, and they were just, oh, yeah, you know who the good guys are here. Come on now. Let's take a look. What's that say? England. Yeah, right there. Where all my ancestors come from, pretty much. As I found out from my DNA test. Not from 23andMe. Ancestry.com. Only way to fly. All right. And so I started out where I was going to actually build the Golden Hind from Revell. I know Airfix makes one. There are better kits of the Golden Hind out there, but I wanted to build that Revell kit. So let's go to our slideshow. Here it is. Slide number 1. My friends, this is evidence of something like a trout in the milk. It's pretty clear that I have 2 kits, okay? I would recommend, and I'm not trying to be funny. I know it's hard to tell. I needed 2 kits to get this thing built. Needed them. There were accidents. A couple of things got misplaced. A couple of things got lost. You're dealing with all kinds of tiny little parts for the rigging. I needed 2 kits, so I'm glad I had 2 kits. However, that's not why I bought this second kit here. This guy, this Golden Hind. Why did I buy that? This new one. You know, this one is a work of art. The box. You know, the box in some of these Revell kits is worth more than the kit inside. I think this might be one of those. Why would I buy this new Golden Hind? Well, I'm going to be thrown out of the Society of Nautical Ship Modelers, whatever. I'm going to be thrown right out of there because I'm going to tell you, I bought this new Golden Hind kit to get the injection molded Rat lines. That's right. There I said it. Okay. Jeez. All right, fine. The first thing I had to do was decide how I was going to paint this. Because when you paint a ship, you kind of want it to look kind of like, you don't want it to just look like it has plain flat colors. You want it to look like wood and metal and, the sweat and tears and blood and all that stuff. And you want it to look like a canvas, old-fashioned. You want it to look like something that nobody's really going to believe sailed around the world. And the only way to do that is with some kind of a wash or a glaze. So I decided to try to make some washes and glazes, and I experimented around and experimented around. And I eventually decided that my best bet was to take Future. We all know what Future is. Okay, stop pretending you don't know what that is. Future, and I mixed it with food coloring. And with food coloring and Future, you can work wonders. And the best thing about these little guys, or this food coloring, is that they look like happy little elves. Now, I don't know what you think when you see this, but I'm thinking, if Disney had only called me before they spent all that money on those dwarves, or dwarfs, I could have solved that problem for them. It would have been easy. Pretty cheap too. Okay, this is where I did a lot of the experiments. I did a lot of mixing of different colors, different shades, different undercoats, kind of glazes. It's all about glazes and washes. All done with Future. You can take Future big sigh, because Future is, of course, no longer being made. But I'm just going to talk about it as if that were true, because this is the nostalgia show. Back when we had Future, you could mix it with water, you mix in some food coloring, mix a little, some green, some red. I mean, you could get some pretty wild looking colors, nice bright browns, reds, yellows, beige, tan, whatever. And you could create something. And after a lot of experimenting around, I decided on a particular look that I liked. Then I went to a local, I'll just say I went to a place and I found this is actual flooring, an actual place. And I said, that looks like a deck of a ship a little bit, so I'm going to try to make my model look like that, because I don't have any I don't have any sense. This is what it boils down to. So I said, I want to make my model look like this. So I experimented around, and we ended up with a deck that looked like this. This is a flattering photo, but it is pretty amazing how I got these knots in the boards and the decking. Now you might ask yourself, how did you do that? Well, there were little bits of fluff or dirt or dandruff that got in the glaze, and when I brushed it on, it left these little dots, and they look just like knots, which rhymes. So just remember, there's no mistakes. There are just happy accidents. The cannon were brass, I think. Anyway, I'm trying not to paint things black, okay? You're going to end up with a black ship if you're not careful here. It's all going to be black. It probably was in reality black, but I decided they should be brass. The gold Sharpie did a wonderful job. There's one right there. And you can see those little eyelets where those tiny little pieces of thread are going to get tied in there. This was enough to cause me to have at least one major hernia. And of course, the stern of the ship has this cool the royal coat of arms of England. And you can see that it was detailed using a gold Sharpie. The gold Sharpie. Everyone's friend. Okay, there's the layout of the deck. It's beautiful except for this. I don't like this boat. It looks too clean. So I went and again, here's another angle. Trying to tie all these little threads was enough to make me totally out of my mind. Even more than now. So I went and got the other boat from the other kit, and again, just put it in there, and I think that looks better. That's just my opinion. I don't know. The decals were in very bad shape. However, a coat of liquid decal film and some cursing and swearing, and we got them glued to the kit just like that. I really didn't want to have to do without them, and I'm glad that they went on there, even though there's some silvering. There's a lot of silvering. These decals were in really bad shape. Probably the coolest thing about this model, you just do not see very many of these being built. Coolest thing about it are these little figures. I really didn't know much about figure painting, but I was willing to, learn. I guess that's Sir Francis right there. This is one of the flunkies. Maybe that's the first mate. He's got a red hat. There's this guy. He looks kind of sinister. I'm not sure what he's up to. It's like he's getting ready to pull something. Get some more crewmen down here. The figures were great. I thought those oars should be red because if they were floating around the ocean, if you dropped an oar overboard, you're going to want to find that puppy, and if it's red, it'll be easier. That's my reasoning. Am I wrong? Who knows? All of this rigging, with all of these blocks and everything, you really do kind of need two kits because the little blocks get broken, misplaced, lost. And I just don't want to have to worry about that stuff. Now, the question that needs to be asked is, what is the difference between Francis Drake, the Golden Hind, and a pirate? And the difference between Francis Drake and a pirate, if you talk to somebody who's played Sid Meier's Pirates, is that Francis Drake had a letter of marque from the Queen, and so he was a privateer, right? Is that it? Is that the explanation? I don't think that's the whole. I don't think that's the whole thing. See, the difference between Francis Drake and the reason that we invest so much of ourselves in these fantasies has to do with something that has nothing to do with what we do in the modern world. The modern world has completely forgotten the difference between Francis Drake, Sir Francis Drake, and a pirate. They've completely forgotten it. And it's the difference between Sir Francis Drake and a pirate has to do with just one word: honor. That's the word. That's today's word: honor. Now, I'm not going to try to explain what that means. We live in a time where that word has become as obsolete as a dinosaur. And I couldn't think of a name of a dinosaur fast enough to say the name, but as obsolete as a Pediosaurus or anything else. It's obsolete. Honor is the difference. And it's honor that makes something like this kit meaningful, makes something like this model meaningful. If this model were a pirate ship and it was just a monument to greed, and the only thing that anybody cared about was how much money did they get? How much loot did they bring home? Well, that would be very sad indeed. Unfortunately, that's the world we're living in now. But there was a time when things were different. And that's why we build models like this, so we can remember how things used to be before the current calamity. Okay. I'm not going to do this again. So whatever happened in this video is going to go up. It's going up. It's going up. All right. Like, subscribe, click this and that. And hey, man, don't sweat it. All right? We'll see you. You're doing great. You're doing great. Talking to you, you're doing great. Later.